This video is sponsored by you and your incredibly generous support on Patreon. Help me continue to make videos, get early access to completely ad-free uploads, your name in the credits, and more by heading to patreon.com/writingongame. Thank you so much, and now on with the show. Despite the recent news that the absurdly titled Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War had managed to become one of the top 20 best-selling games in US history, what little talk I've seen of the game since its release has been lukewarm at best. People don't care or they hate this thing. It would appear as if series fatigue has become truly widespread as Activision has served up yet another multiplayer mode that seems especially underwhelming given Warzone's recent success. And sure, it's hard to really disagree with that assessment, but what I want to contest today is this idea that somehow the game's single player mode also fell foul of this same kind of creative stagnancy, because I certainly don't see it that way. Even as a sucker for these short, shallow, linear action roller coasters, with the discussions surrounding this game fresh in my mind, coupled with my own fatigue given how ultimately forgettable 2019's reboot of Modern Warfare ended up being, I certainly wasn't expecting to find that this was by far the most fun I've ever had with a Call of Duty campaign, one whose complete lack of pretense as to how dumb this series is allows the developers space to focus on ensuring the action you're here for is as tightly paced and surprisingly varied as possible, and in doing so, perhaps unintentionally, present a starker portrayal of the evils of conflict in a much more convincing way than its try-hard predecessor ever could. And the best way I think I can describe what I mean by all of this is to talk about the one key similarity I noticed between Black Ops and Modern Warfare, that both games feature very prominent missions focused on invading a house, both playing off the tension inherent to such militaristic action taking place in a domestic setting, but both to very different ends. In Modern Warfare's case, it's a solemn, regimented affair. Night vision goggles drench your surroundings in a sickly, otherworldly green as you systematically clear the floors of an unsuspecting enemy in the confines of their home. Even with suppressors on, bullets wreak havoc on these cramped interiors, the clouds of debris giving way to cries of pain and despair of all ages, culminating in a standoff where a potentially innocent woman is gunned down. It's uncomfortable, what you might perceive as a critique of this new, intimate kind of warfare, lining up with the developers' stated intention to reground Call of Duty as a serious franchise that says something, going as far as to call the game anti-war before it tells you straight up that she had to die because she was moving towards a detonator. And hey, you got the intel, right? All is well. War is good, it would seem, as long as the capital G good guys win it. Here we have a sliver of potentially meaningful gameplay undermined at every turn by a completely self-serious narrative that always seems to want to contradict your actions. And so we skip a year to Cold War, and you're navigating the same dingy streets and back alleys, trying not to draw attention to yourself as you approach a similar house before things take a turn. Go, go, go! That's right, no one will ever know the efforts of these clandestine operatives doing the government's dirty work in the shadows. Apparently, even when they're enacting full-blown Rambo-level carnage on the residential rooftops of Amsterdam, coldly chucking people off onto the streets below. And that's before they immediately shift to blow up a massive freight plane on a Turkish airstrip with an RC car, then pilot a helicopter through Vietnam, then embark on an actually secretive stealth mission on the suitably smoky streets of 80s Berlin, then accidentally devolve into an insane shootout because I'm a dumbass and got spotted, and then I'm invading an ex-Stasi agent's apartment trying to avoid the dude's family members to gain intel on a nuclear weapon, all within the space of about an hour. I'm jumping off of buildings, firing machine guns on zip lines like a pirate would swing a cutlass. This game has thrown to the wayside any notion that it's somehow a serious portrayal of the horrors of war, and weirdly the resulting game feels far less incongruous for it. See, Modern Warfare had you controlling a kid, tripping up over dead children in your path before giving said kid an achievement for taking out 2 guards with 1 crack shot. It couldn't get too wild or wacky with its scenarios because it needed to remind you that war was grim and that these protagonists have to deal with the internal struggle of how far they're willing to cross the line, what rules they're willing to break to get what they need in a world where the line between good guys and bad guys is blurred. Except it's ultimately fine because you didn't kill those kids, right? The Russians did. Conversely, Cold War's first mission has a dude pleading with you about these same kinds of rules before the game quite literally puts a bullet in that idea. Your other pal talks about getting dibs on the next one. Cool, got it. From the get-go, it's made abundantly clear. These people are not heroes, they are fucking evil sociopaths. You know, at least Cold War understands what it is. And with that clear understanding, I immediately distanced myself from whatever story the game was actually trying to tell with these assholes, bogged down with code names and double, triple crossings as it is, and could focus purely on the completely wild set pieces this game throws you along at a ludicrously fast clip. See, the variety on show here goes beyond the way prior titles would break up your slogs through identical corridors and blown out buildings with an AC-130 mission or something. It's not even down to the branching narrative or occasional dialogue choices you come across, which, while novel, don't seem to actually alter things much at all. It really does lie simply in the care paid to pacing the 9 or so missions that form the game's critical path as effectively as possible, ensuring you're never doing one thing for too long. For example, the game's standout mission sees you exploring the halls of the KGB headquarters as a Russian mole working for the Americans, meeting with Gorbachev himself and his crew, including Zakayev, who are all trying to weed you out. The game gives you multiple options as to how you might throw them off your scent, from rerouting phone records to frame another officer, to bribing a security guard with stolen cigars, or coercing a detainee to do the job for you, each requiring you to make your way through a different part of the environment in a different way and avoid enemies. You then grant access to the Americans, who, after an incredibly tense brush up with security, take off their disguises and gear up to grab the intel they came here for by force. The spy thriller espionage gives way to frantic action as you fight your way to the vault, lock yourselves in, defend yourselves against an oncoming siege, get the data, make your way out, survive a pseudo-stealth sequence where the lights are pulled and all you have to go on are the flashlights of your enemies, rescue the informant via a dramatic gas attack, and after surviving all of this in a sequence I can only describe as yes Russian, the tables are turned as enemies now cower in your wake before being mowed down by your heavy machine guns while you narrowly escape exploding cars. It's brilliant, a true Michael Mann style heist, taking its time to go through all the stages of casing the joint however you see fit, execution on the plan, with excellent framing as the characters nervously realise the computer's progress bar is lurching far slower than the enemy's progress getting through the door, followed by a truly explosive, daring escape acting as the cathartic crescendo. It's, like every mission here, is far longer than your typical COD skirmish, but thanks to a careful, calculated escalation and release of tension, giving you control over every aspect of this heist or whatever situation you find yourself in, sees the game avoid the usual problem of relying too much on tedious walk and talk sections to break up the numbing barrage of explosions. And this is why, for me, far from being a hindrance to the game, its complete lack of historical accuracy actually works in Cold War's favour. It doesn't matter that blowing your way out of the KGB like this would absolutely turn the Cold War into full-blown nuclear Armageddon. It's fine, it's a heist. It doesn't matter that the aforementioned stealth mission devolves into a mass police shootout. The game lets me get it wrong and forces me to react to that crazy situation, which in itself is far more engaging than the normal method of having me replay sections over and over again if one particular object isn't clicked on in the exact right order. If disregarding accuracy or gravitas entirely gives us missions this fun, I'll take it every day of the week. Which brings me on to a perhaps more difficult criticism of this game I saw as soon as Cold War's story trailer was revealed, that it featured controversial President Ronald Reagan giving a supposedly rousing speech about how these people are protecting the free men and women of the world and to give them whatever they need in order to do so, apparently framing Reagan as a true American hero leading the charge against evil, conveniently brushing under the rug the various atrocities that occurred under his administration. And yeah, again, I just don't see it here. Because, well, hear me out. If Cold War is somehow trying to lionize the late former president, tapping into that typical COD jingoism of setting up the USA as the good guys weeding out some foreign boogeyman, then it does a terrible job of it. I mean, just think about the context of this speech. The president is calmly entering a room full of what we know to be murderous sociopaths and enthusiastically giving them the go-ahead to do some horrendously illegal, clearly immoral stuff that you yourself control that only serves to further illustrate their sociopathy. You know, just because the game doesn't outright say this is bad doesn't make it anywhere close to good. It's not even a question of whether or not you think Reagan was a bad president. To be clear, I think he sucked. Far from whitewashing his legacy though, just his depiction alone in this game where he tries to posit these clearly evil maniacs as the good guys is, to me, about as damning an indictment as one could possibly imagine. It says a lot that you get more or less the same speech from Gorbachev in the KGB. Sure, you can question the intentionality of this portrayal, especially given Activision's removing footage of the Tiananmen Square protests from the game's teaser trailer to appease the Chinese government, I guess. But do developer or publisher intentions really matter here, given the very obvious nature of what we're looking at? Does any of this matter? I've said it once and I'll say it again. Getting angry when a Call of Duty game doesn't present an historically accurate, erudite critique of war at this point feels like getting annoyed at the anatomical inaccuracies of Mortal Kombat. I mean, what did you expect? I'll go further and say there's a part of me that actually kind of appreciates the game's approach here, because I did not expect it to be so blatant in just placing the former president at the heart of this obviously insane operation, to so aggressively say fuck off to the modern warfare method of proclaiming its anti-war sensibilities, and then actively suggesting that as long as that potentially innocent civilian is going for that detonator or that gun, as they always are in that game, then the ends always justify the means. On the other hand, Cold War weirdly just is what it is, a completely over-the-top cartoon roller coaster, and this comparatively straight-ahead approach just allows the malice of these characters to speak for itself. Contrary to what Reagan tells you, there really are no good guys to be found here. And of course, the consequence of everyone in this game being a despicable asshole means that there's also a distinct absence of likeable characters to speak of, and as such, very little to keep me focused on the game's plot. I've played through the game multiple times and couldn't really tell you much about the main players here, but what really have stuck with me are those moments, those set pieces, that more experiential gameplay narrative constantly and meaningfully shifting in a way that allows no one idea to outstay its welcome. And this is before we even get to the expected Black Ops weirdness at the end of the game, that while I didn't really care about the plot implications, I found absolutely fascinating that a game within a series so infamous for its stagnancy would lean so hard into this kind of Stanley Parable-esque foregrounding of its artifice as a game. So yeah, the question of was Black Ops Cold War really that bad is obviously a personal one, but what can I say, I had a genuinely good time with this. Just like I believe there's room for mindless action movies, I believe there's space for games that don't exposit their quote-unquote serious nature to you at every turn, while the gameplay does nothing to back that up. And judging by the variety of these fantastically paced missions that result from Cold War's realization of that fact, like the best supposedly mindless action films, it's safe to say there's probably more thought put into all of this than you might think. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, help me out by hitting the corresponding button and subscribing, as well as checking out my podcast in the description below. I'd also like to thank my patrons here. These videos simply would not exist without your support, and I really mean that. If you've enjoyed any of the videos I've put out and want to help the channel continue so I can keep making more, you can directly help out as well as get things like early access to ad-free video uploads by heading to patreon.com/writingongames and pledging only what you feel comfortable with. I am forever thankful for your support in whatever form it takes. Special thanks go to Mark B. Writing, Artyom Vitsyuk, Nicholas Villeneuve, Captain Knuspich, Leah Chinello, Henry Mielek, Bryce Snyder, Lucas, David Björk, Winter, Timothy Jones, Hebe Amori, The Nameless Guy, Tommy Carver Chaplin, Dr. Motorcycle, Shardfire, Rob, Anna Pimentel, Jesse Ryan, Spike Jones, Dallas Keane, Charlie Kimball, and Charlie Yang. And with that, this has been another episode of Writing on Games. Thank you all so much for watching, stay safe, and I will see you all next time.